talking trash again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Should be recording.
No. You were looking all sleepy. Since I know you, I just thought.
I think she only has like
At least look like I was working.
You're just like,
she is only
So we're
I
going to
think
go.
I made that face with Shelby was taking a picture.
I think we'll jump in and go ahead and get started. I know these guys have some great stuff to talk about, and I don't want to cut them short at the end here. So I have to do this for the recording. This session is bringing makerspaces into schools and libraries. Northshore School District, delve into the world of making. I know at our district about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started planning a new middle school, and the people are saying we need to have these makerspaces in your school. So we have 3 of them designed, and I think in the early on, people are saying, well, that's great. Now what do we do with them once we have these spaces? So I think we're going to learn a little bit about how that works and how that might work in a library or other spaces in your school. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Josh from North Shore. Take it away.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll do this part.
Good to go.
All right. Thank you all for coming. We're here today to talk about some makerspace stuff. So I'm Josh Eamon. I'm an instructional technology coordinator with Northshore School District.
And I'm Sarah Lawrence. I'm also an instructional technology coordinator. And we both are former teachers as well.
Yeah, that as well. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about maybe what a makerspace is, but I have a feeling most of you probably already know that at this point. It's kind of one of those things that's been going around a lot. Talk a little bit about research we did in North Shore to kind of into makerspaces and kind of what our conclusions were and how we kind of decided to make these makerspace kits for libraries to roll out into libraries at some of our schools. And so we'll talk about, what was included in those kits, the PD that went along with them for the librarians and stuff in those spaces, all sorts of fun stuff. And we brought toys to play with at some point today as well, which is all this stuff that was in some of our kits. And so get hands-on and play around with a few things, and then we'll talk about future steps. So today we're going to talk about, why North Shore, why we decided to do this project, how we put together our kits of stuff that we pushed out, and the PD and all that sort of fun stuff. We already did intros here, but there you go.
We actually want to know a little bit about you as
Yes.
well. We want to get a feel for how many instructional type people we have in the room versus how many technical, more nerdier side of things. Yeah. So if you were an instructional person, can you raise your hand? You can be.
Okay.
I wholeheartedly agree. You would lean more one way or the other. And then more on the uber nerdy side. Okay. So we will try to tailor some of the stuff that we talk about. To
And if you have questions at any point as we go through, please feel free to ask. Okay. All right. So first thing, what is a makerspace? I'm sure we all kind of heard about these. So, you go online and what is a makerspace, and you'll get like 10 million different definitions of different things. But ultimately, it's sort of a place where kids can come, get hands-on, learn stuff, build stuff. Very open-ended, very student-driven, all those sorts of things. A couple of things. This is a definition I pulled off there that's from that website at the bottom there. It's, the idea of getting hands-on and doing stuff. And makerspaces don't have to be all 3D printers and laser cutters and programming and coding. It can be other stuff, woodworking, sewing, craft stuff even could count, right? Writing, depending on who you talk to, there's lots of different definitions of what can happen in a makerspace. What I liked about this particular definition of a makerspace is, a makerspace is not solely a science lab, wood shop, computer lab, or art room, but it contains elements of all these in one space. And that's what I really liked about this particular quote I found, because when you think about a makerspace and all the stuff that can happen in there, it does have components of all those different things, allowing kids to get hands-on and start making stuff and doing stuff and learning within that process. So at North Shore, we kind of did a little bit of research as to, why is the makerspace such a big thing? What's it do? And so I highlighted a few terms in this definition. I'm not going to read that whole slide to you because I hate that when someone puts a slide up and just reads the slide and next slide sort of thing. So, but what I wanted to highlight here is, that idea is kind of self-directed. Students kind of can do what they want, what their interests are within a makerspace. They're hands-on, making stuff, doing stuff. They're not sitting watching someone else do stuff, they're doing it. Highly collaborative, they're working together. You go into some makerspaces some really awesome ones, and you'll see kids, actually one kid go, I don't know how to do this, and another one goes, oh, I figured that out last week, let me help you. They're helping each other figure stuff out and learn. And this idea that they're multidisciplinary, right? It's not just tech or science. It can be all sorts of different subjects kind of interlaced together. Okay? Excuse me. So, you know, the other thing we kind of looked at when we're looking into makerspaces, you know, makerspaces tend to foster these sort of qualities here on this bulleted list. You know, this idea of playing around and exploring, right? Kids, well, I wonder how this works, and they go play around with it and figure out how it works, right? Something like that. Or I want to build this. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure out how to build whatever they want. You know, that sort of idea, that sort of exploration and openness. You know, the third bullet there, that idea that they help each other in makerspaces. If you have like a good, strong makerspace going, they're helping each other out. You know, whoever the adult in the room is, they don't necessarily have to know how to do everything that's in the makerspace. Kids can help figure that out and help teach other kids how to use stuff as well. So, you know, you can bring in community members and volunteers like that if you have those in your community, parents, other, you know, businesses, folks who can come in and help in your makerspace. That's an awesome connection to your community. And that idea of creating versus consuming. You know, that's a big part of makerspaces. We're making stuff. I'm not just watching a video. I'm not just playing a game. I'm actually making the game, or I'm making the video. I'm making a robot, or whatever you want it to do. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. And well, just a side note here, kind of nicely ties into what our speaker was talking about before lunch, right? That idea of, you know, you're not really careers anymore. Kids don't really need career paths, they need skills for what's coming up, because what's coming up, we don't even know what's coming up yet, right? A lot of those skills he had listed kind of align nicely with a lot of this ideas of what happens in a makerspace. And so, you know, those, it kind of nice tie in there. So basically, we at Northshore kind of decided to go with some makerspaces. One, we want to kind of build that idea, or, you know, create that curiosity in kids, right? You know, I wonder how this works. You know, and then, you know, I have a couple kids. My oldest would be like, oh, I wonder how that works. I don't know, and kind of move on, right? My youngest, complete opposite. She is totally into tearing stuff apart and building stuff. She would find that same thing, go, I wonder how that works, and then rip it apart to find out, or go online or do whatever. So that curiosity, that wonder, you know, kind of, I wonder how stuff works. I wonder how I do this, you know. Encourage playfulness, that kind of more laid back. A makerspace is much more laid back than like a classroom or a lab, you know, and that's a plus, in my opinion. You know, makerspace ideas, you know, everyone can have the same idea, but people can approach it in very, very different ways. And a makerspace is a great way to kind of see those each individual ways and have kids sort of go, oh, I hadn't thought about that, that's cool. Or, you know, I'll try that next time I do it, or something. This is one as my kind of one of my personal favorites. Makerspaces tend to be in an environment where it's okay for things not to work the first time, right? Classrooms, not so much. You fail that test, I failed that test. I didn't do it right the first time. You know, maybe I can retake it, maybe I can't, doesn't matter. But in makerspaces, you see it all the time. You see kids try and build something. Oh, that didn't work. How can I fix that? Same sort of scenario, but they approach it very differently for some reason. And, you know, I think that idea of being able to fail and not have it be like a disaster or the end of the world, but just an opportunity to figure out what's wrong and learn from it is a huge advantage to makerspaces. One of my favorite things I saw when I was doing research was a makerspace who had a table of failures. So things that didn't work, kids would just go put over there. And that was the stuff that didn't work. So they were like, weren't ashamed that it didn't work. It wasn't a bad thing that it hadn't worked. It was a chance to show off and go, don't try this way. This doesn't work. You know, I love that idea. And again, encourage collaboration with the students. And also makerspaces tend to be those spaces where some of those kids that tend to kind of fall through the cracks can kind of find something that they can hook into at school. Because it is very different than sort of your standard traditional classroom. So because of all these things, oops, Oh, fancy. Yeah, I'm not even sure how I did that one. So, so this is a quote from Dale Daughtry. Anyone know that name? You may, if you're into makerspaces. Have you ever heard of Make Magazine or any of those sorts of things? He started all of that stuff. He's huge in the sort of maker world. And just a quote from him, again, talking about that idea of, this quote specifically is more like, we all really, if you look at it, we all make stuff every day. Whether we're making a robot, we're making a program, we're making something, right? Creating a PD class, creating whatever. Every day, to some degree, we're making something. That's just sort of part of human nature, is this idea of we want to make stuff and create stuff. Might not necessarily be a robot, but we all create stuff. And just that idea of embracing that, and we're all sort of pre-programmed for that modality, right, to create stuff. So why not tap into that and for our kids when we're teaching them? So I think so that's kind of why we did it. Yeah, question?
Is this a class or an after-school activity?
Oh, great question. So what we did at Northshore, we ended up offering 10 makerspace kits to librarians. We have 30-some schools.
32.
That's from elementary through high school. We found some money. Somehow our boss found some money. And we were able to put together 10 kits. So we opened it up to all the librarians. Okay. And it was just first ones who signed up got in, basically. First come, first served till we were full.
And that was important for us because we had people who were interested and wanted to be on board, and they were already bought in and were ready to take it on and make it a reality, as opposed to just putting it in every library in the district where you may have some librarians and some staff members that are not quite ready for it.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. How are your libraries staffed? Do you have librarians or do you have?
We have librarians.
Each library has one full-time librarian and some more.
What was that?
Like I said, each library has one full-time certificated librarian. Some have, additional staffing as well, just depending on the size of the school.
Yeah, that's where our district's at right now with that. So, and so the 10 spots opened up. They filled up really quickly. I don't remember how long, but it was less than a day. And we ended up with 8 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school that signed up. So, and we'll talk about what actually all those different levels got, because they got different levels stuff to get depending upon their grade level. So, do you want the little tracker?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we decided what to put in kits. And I have notes here, so I keep looking at my iPad so I don't forget to say some things. Just to get to the right place here. So before we started just buying stuff, which is super exciting. Hey, you have money, you get to buy nerdy things for 10 library spaces. Like, it's really easy to just geek out and say, I want this, 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 and this. We took a step back and wanted to be really thoughtful and intentional about the things that we ended up putting in these spaces. So, so we did a few things. We did some research, and Josh has already shared a lot of that. What is makerspace? What are some of the key components of really good makerspaces? Yeah.
Also, at this point, you go online, you look like how to start a makerspace, and you'll find a million sites with lists of stuff that you should get. And we used a lot of those and kind of looked at some of those and kind of picked and chose from some of those things.
Yeah.
So you'll see kind of when we get into what was actually there, kind of probably see some similarities to some of those lists.
Yeah. We did interviews. We had a couple of librarians already in the district, one that had a grant at the high school level. We had an elementary librarian that was already kind of building her own makerspace. So we did some interviews with those folks to say, what is working in those spaces for you? And we really gleaned a lot of information about what is good at elementary versus what's really good at the middle or high school level. And then we really wanted to keep it simple. 3D printers are really cool, laser cutters are really cool, but they have a steep learning curve. To 3D print something, you need to have all the software and time to design it and how many hours for that thing to print out. So although those things are really awesome and they can be great in some makerspaces, they weren't right for the setting that we were putting them in.
And also considering out of our 10, 8 were elementary schools.
Yeah.
Right, so dropping a 3D printer in an elementary school can be done, but takes some work, and Also budgetary concerns, they can be expensive, so instead of buying one 3D printer, we were able to buy a bunch of other stuff.
We also wanted to consider a few other things. The feedback we got from librarians is the ones that had already started some stuff is to start small. They started with puzzles, with learn how to bind your own journal. How high can you stack these 100 cups? And really using these activities to kind of build a culture and an understanding of what a makerspace is and how that library space was kind of transforming.
And another addition to that is a couple of the librarians we interviewed that already had these said that, starting this simple is not even really a makerspace activity, just putting puzzles out on the counter. So kids started to go, instead of a library, a place I have to go in and not talk or do anything except read a book or look something up, making it okay that there are spaces you can do other things in here. You can work on this puzzle, you can do this. One librarian had a bunch of red plastic cups and how high can you stack them sort of activity. Setting that sort of groundwork before the real sort of makerspace stuff even really sort of hits the shelves, just to have that idea of, oh, it's okay to do these sorts of things. Because some kids walk into the library and it's a library, you have to whisper, you can't talk, do anything fun.
Yeah.
So, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
I remember walking, there's one library I remember going into with one of our coworkers when he was interviewing, and they were making, they were using makey-makeys to make a DDR mat, and so in comes Todd on, part of his interview to become part of our team, and he jumps right in with students, and it's loud, and we're doing DDR together, and it's just, those things really help transform that library space from the place where you can't talk, and you should be just looking up things in the library catalog to a place that's really collaborative and a rich learning space. We also wanted to just remember and remind ourselves before we started buying all the things that makerspace is not a one-time thing. It's really, really about the process. And the things that you do in a makerspace don't always come with discretely defined directions. So it's a place for exploration. It's a place to be creative. And there is always something to be learned.
And I will say right now with our 10 spaces, we have a mix. We have some folks who are totally on board with this idea of makerspace stuff out all the time and just go do it. And if you wanted something else, ask me, I'll grab you new equipment. And we still have a few folks that are still like, here's our activity for this week, here's the steps how to do it, sort of stuff. So it's kind of a mix. We're trying to get folks to kind of, ideally that's our goal, is a sort of open-ended idea. But it's a process. It's going to take some time.
So considering all those things, we wanted our kits to be flexible in the things that were in them and the things that teachers and librarians could do with those. We wanted basic things and more advanced activities and things. And then we wanted materials that could kind of be mushed together and mashed up and interchanged. So those were some of the big things when we were deciding what to put in our kits. So then we got to buy all the things, and I'll tell you what those are in a minute. But these were the boxes in our cubicles, and they go back a few rows. So we bought a ton of things. And like Josh said earlier, we created separate kits for elementary, middle, and high school levels to really be able to differentiate for student needs.
To comment about this picture, what you can't see is the table we usually sit at to work at collaboratively. It's buried about 3 boxes deep right now in that picture. Yeah. It was a lot of stuff.
It was crazy and exciting. All the Amazon boxes.
And a little
Our office manager hated us.
Yeah.
But there's lots of Legos. See the Legos? There's so many Legos. So all the things. I'm going to show you this, and then we'll make sure at the beginning of the presentation there's a link to this so that you can reference this list later. For elementary makerspace kits, they got Legos. They got both basic building sets of Legos. They also got Lego Story Starter and Lego We Do kits. The Story Starter and We Do kits both require some software. Remind me, Josh, one of them is a Chrome extension?
We Do has a Chrome extension or Chrome app. They both have iPad apps and desktop versions that you can use depending on what devices you have.
Yeah, so those were some things we had to consider. Okay, do we need to also buy software to go with these things? Will it work on the devices that we have that they have access to in their libraries? Cardboard construction tools. So we have the Make Do cardboard construction tools. Safe little saws, little cardboard saws. So you can create things and you can screw them in. Ooh. We're gonna play with those later. But I mean, these are fantastic. Like, I don't have to have scissors in my makerspace and worry about my first graders that are hanging out in my library. They got this. They're safe. They're hopefully not gonna cut a finger off, right? At least with those. Everybody got a basic toolkit: hammer, screwdrivers, those kinds of things. I know in the Maywood Library, they take things apart. They take apart printers. They take apart old computers. They use their toolkits. LEDs and a variety of different batteries, AA's, coin batteries. And one piece of this, when folks applied, we gave them everything up front. The ongoing cost of batteries and replacing some of those consumable things is then on the onus of the library. We had LittleBits kits, Makeys, Bear conductive kits. You can kind of read all of these. What I will say is everything from Lincoln Logs down are specific to elementary, right? Yeah. Everything from Bear conductive kits up. You'll also notice on the next slide, middle and high school also got those things. At the middle and high school level, what was different is they, instead of getting the Story Starter and the We Do kits, they got Mindstorms, which again, there's another software install component to think about with that. And then Spark Fun, Spiros, Hummingbird, they got Duct Tape projects, so much fun. Raspberry Pi. And then at our high school, we actually had a unique opportunity at our high school. They already had a grant, and they had already spent money on some makerspace things. So we were able to get them some VEX robotics kits that might not necessarily be part of a standard high school makerspace if we add more on to other high schools. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they had gotten a grant of stuff already, so a lot of this base stuff already here they had, so they didn't need more of it, so they got something different. Yeah, question?
What was the cost per kit?
Per kit, it was right around $4,000. Per kit. Yeah.
Everybody also got a
I will
cart.
say the biggest chunk of that for most of these kits was actually the Legos, because those Lego sets can get pricey. For the secondary here, the other big chunk was Spheros were fairly pricey as well, but they weren't as bad. And then the VEX kits were expensive, but that was kind of substituted out because we didn't get some of the other stuff.
What was the quantity? Is it one-offs on each of these?
Depends on what you're talking about, which part.
Yeah, so I was going to say, how
So
many
for-
Spiros did everybody get?
Somewhere.
Yeah, if you're interested, I can give you my contact information. I can send you the exact list and quantities of everything we purchased. But it was usually we had multiple of everything. So because if you just have like one set, that's like one group of kids could do it, that one thing. So we tried to give several sets of everything, so at least a couple groups could be going.
Is there anything else you want to say about the stuff that's actually in the kits, Josh?
We're going to talk about some of the stuff here in just a minute that we brought with us.
Yeah.
Question?
Have you taken requests for additions to the kit?
No, not at this point. You know, and it's a good question. We have got some feedback about some specific stuff. Like elementary level, we had these little gear sets, those little plastic gear sets, you know, where you get different size gears and they mesh together and you either crank it and see how everything moves and stuff. Some feedback I've gotten about those is the ones we purchased were a little flimsy and some of them have broken fairly quickly. So if we were, you know, if we do another round of this, I would probably look for a different one for those. I've also found other tools since then, or other things that might subbed out with some of the other stuff in here. I've recently, within the last year, discovered Voxels. Those are awesome. I would probably put some of those in if we do another round of these. Bloxel's this little set of blocks and an app you get, and basically kids can create their own video games, like an 8-bit video game type thing.
You create your own
There's little
world, your
green
own
blocks that represent
characters.
ground, and blue blocks represent water, and you just put the blocks where you want it, and you take a picture, and now you have a game level, basically. It's really pretty cool.
And then one other question,
Yeah.
if you're gonna cover, just stay a little bit, what about damage, repair, replacement, consumable?
Yeah, consumable stuff. So we gave them stuff like a bunch of batteries for all the equipment to start off, but the ongoing cost of that's gonna be up to the library to purchase new batteries and things like that. Consumable stuff, trying to think what we had for consumable besides batteries, paper tape, things like that.
Or even just damage, I mean.
Yeah. So
The damage, if something was damaged, like a Sphero or something along those lines, my boss lady's in the back of the room, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe buildings were responsible for if they wanted to replace those or repair those, and we were just doing the upfront infusion of here is all the stuff.
here's something to start.
And so if something breaks, if it's, if it came broken, of course we'll kind of get that fixed or replaced under warranty or return, that kind of thing. But student broke it or chucked it across the library, that is up to the school.
Which luckily hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Nothing thrown across the library.
To our knowledge. So Josh is going to talk a little bit about rollout and PD,
Yeah.
and then we'll actually get hands-on with stuff. I'm going to open that door because I'm feeling very warm.
No worries. Okay, so along with the kits of stuff, we wanted to do some PD for librarians. Some of the librarians, we kind of had what's kind of interesting, out of the 10, we actually had a kind of a span of experience with makerspaces. We had a couple that had some that were going, fairly small, but had sort of started playing around with it a little bit. We had a couple that were, kind of thinking about it and looking into it and maybe tried one or two little activities but didn't really have a space yet. And then we had a couple that were like brand new to the whole idea, kind of heard about them, wanted to try it out, sort of stuff. So we kind of had this whole wide spectrum. So first of all was the stuff. So again, here's the picture of the boxes of stuff we had in our cube area. This was actually what ended up being an elementary kit, all the stuff that was included in an elementary kit. So there's snap circuits and Lincoln logs and Legos and all sorts of stuff. So
we also included a rolling cart because we wanted them to have a place either to store stuff or as something to push stuff out into a space in our library. We didn't have a permanent space for all their makers.
Right, and so you can kind of see the cart there, but then we also gave them a couple of other bins because not everything would fit on the cart for shipping out to schools. So, and they were very appreciative of bins to store stuff. So what we did is we actually had a 3-hour training to go along with this, which 3 hours when you're talking about this stuff really isn't a whole lot of time, but it was enough to kind of get things going. So they came in. We talked about the idea of a makerspace and sort of philosophies behind that whole sort of maker movement, and some of those reasons we saw at the beginning, which is why North Shore wanted to even start trying to do makerspaces, get kids building stuff and learning and all hands-on and collaborative and curious and all those sorts of things. So the training they came in, we talked about all of that stuff. We went through their kits and kind of showed them all the stuff that was in there. And then we gave them a good chunk of time just to play with it, right? Get hands-on, start seeing what stuff does and figuring stuff out. And so these are some pictures of some of them working on some different projects around the room during that time. So they came in, we did, started off with, the whole philosophy behind it, maker mindset, that sort of stuff. What was in there, give them some time to play around, and then we kind of ended with some starting project ideas, things to get them rolling, and kind of get a makerspace going. Also we, at that time, set up a Google community for them to be able to work with each other, so they could post questions and ideas and resources and things like that. So, because I knew it would be really hard to try and pull them all again once school started at one time for meetings. That's always hard to do. Once school's rolling and everyone's busy doing their stuff. But a Google community, it should be community, not hangout, I just noticed that, sorry about that. A community lets people post stuff and links to resources they found and all sorts of stuff. In all honesty, I was hoping this would be a little more active than it is. There was a lot of stuff. It kind of rolled at the beginning, kind of went pretty well, but then things got busy and activity sort of dropped off recently. So trying to figure out how to kickstart that again, I think. But when it was working, when there were lots of people checking, or when they were checking in on a fairly regular basis, there was some good stuff going on in there. The other thing I did was I actually met individually with each of our 10 librarians once they got all their stuff, and just sat down with them, answered any questions they had about equipment. But that time we also went through and said, things that needed software, like some of the Lego kits and some of the robotic stuff, like, well, what computers do you want this software installed on? And so we identified all of that so that they were set up, ready to go. Yeah?
You might cover this later, but what kind of questions or problems did you hear from librarians?
Well, that initial meeting was still pretty early, so some of the first things I got were there. A lot of them were trying to figure out physical space in their library. Where were they going to have this makerspace area? So we talked about different strategies depending on what their individual library looked like. There was also lots of questions about software initially. Is it going to be on all my computers, or is it only on a couple? And can I put it on these computers, or does it have to be on iPads, or those sorts of things. It was a lot of just initial sort of setup stuff. Was a lot of the sort of initial phase was. Recently, when I get questions, it's more sort of either looking for like ideas for projects or something like that, or technical issues. Something's not working. How do I make it do this or whatever? So it's kind of been morphing as time's gone by. And so, the other thing I forgot to mention, besides all the stuff, we actually gave them some books as well. Anyone ever seen this book? It's called Invent to Learn. If you're interested in makerspaces, I would say this is a must. It's an amazing book. All sorts of great stuff about makerspaces, how to get them started, different things. In the back, there's tons of awesome resources for things you can do and purchase for makerspaces. Some of the stuff we included in our kits, I found in this book. So this is a great book. We also found this book. It's called World of Making, Best Practices for Establishing Makerspace in Your School. It's a short little book. Another really good little book on how to. This lady in particular is a librarian and set up makerspaces in a couple school libraries. So this was very appropriate for our particular project since they were all library based. And then I recently purchased this one myself for project ideas. It's just the big book of makerspace projects. So lots of cool ideas and stuff. So they didn't get this one. I just bought this one within the last month or two, and I stumbled across it. So pretty cool. So here are some photos of some different makerspaces set up in our schools. So you can kind of see they have different setups, from just a couple tables in the corner to a larger cabinet space here. One of the first projects we kind of suggested that they do, which I think is one of my favorites, is your first makerspace project, make a signs for your makerspace, right? So you'll notice we have all these different makerspace signs that they all sort of created within their own makerspaces. I really kind of dig that project. Gives you signs, gets kids involved. They kind of feel like they're part of creation of this whole thing. Great way to advertise, all those sorts of things. So you can kind of see all sorts of different spaces depending upon what was available in their particular library. So some of the project ideas we gave them, Adam Savage, Mythbuster, probably familiar with, huge proponent of makerspaces and making. He's actually a founding member of an organization that just started up within this last year called Nation of Makers, I believe is what it is. Big time into it. Tours the country looking at makerspaces and helping and all that sort of stuff. But great quote from him. I learned at an early age that I could make things that I wanted. It's a very powerful thing to realize as a kid. Legos are a key part of that, right? Got to have Legos, right? Legos is like the makerspace staple, right? It has to be there, it seems like. So, so we included lots of Lego stuff. Everyone got a basic building kit. But here's a really cool activity that I found on the internet. There's a bunch of them, these actually. But they are these little cards where you can put them out with a bucket of Legos. So like this first one says, what does that say? Can't even read that.
Build 2 cars and race them.
There you go. Thank you. Jeez. Build 2 cars and race them. That's build your name in Legos. Build something blindfolded. You know, build something out of. I saw one of these that said like build something out of 10 bricks. Whatever you wanted, right? So all sorts of these little activity things that you can put out. They give a kind of a little bit of guidance, but they're pretty wide open, so kids can do whatever, right? And they're easy to do with the Legos. You don't have to have special sets. You can just get a bucket of bricks, put out some of these. You can find all sorts of cool stuff. Other great thing to do is if you do this, you know, take pictures of some of this stuff and put them around, and you know, kind of help advertise and build that. One other thing I heard about Legos, a great idea I got from one of the librarians we interviewed. She kind of started building her makerspace a while ago and didn't really have a lot of budget for it, but she was able to get buckets and buckets of Legos by sending out in the community the newsletter that went home to families. Hey, you're cleaning out your basement, you have Lego kits you're getting rid of, I'll take them, right? Put that in like the school newsletter that went home to parents. She has so many Legos now, it's crazy. Just tubs of them because, oh, my kids don't play with these anymore, we're cleaning out the playroom. You know, just letting them know that she wants them basically, and she got a whole bunch of them. So some cool little activities with that. Another really cool activity, which is, again, was, I think, suggested from an interview, I believe. She called it Take Apart. Take old stuff, old printer, old something, old radio, put it out with schools, let the kids take it apart, see what's inside, how it works. Awesome. One of the pictures up there of all the school maker spaces, they actually had a take apart activity on the table. It was like an old boom box, you know, like 1980s boom box. That was all in pieces and they were taking it apart. It was pretty cool. The other thing I found out here is I found this artist. It's a photographer, and he has a whole bunch of stuff on his website. But in particular, he has this series of photos that he calls Things Come Apart. And what it is, it's basically a take-apart activity. This is an old rotary phone. Remember those? Just tore it apart, laid out all the pieces, right? This is a simple mechanical pencil, torn apart. He makes them all look pretty, but they're a fire extinguisher, looks like a typewriter type thing. That's a snowblower right over there. You know, that's that idea of taking something apart to see how it all connects and how it all works. You know, really pretty cool idea. This guy takes it to a new level and kind of lays all the pieces out and makes it look pretty and takes photos and sells them. But you could do that as a makerspace activity, right? Take something apart, lay it out, take some photos, put it around your space. I thought that was a really cool idea. The other thing you can do with this activity is as you're taking things apart, kind of note, you know, different parts and, I wonder how that works with this part over here, or why they chose to do this part here, and those sorts of things. There's actually a whole, whoops, wrong button. There's actually a whole series of things, they call them thinking routines, from the Agency by Design website. I don't know if you've ever been there. They have some great resources as well. But along those lines of as you take stuff apart, you note the pieces and kind of go, I wonder why they use this or how this works in relationship to this, and kind of build some of those ideas. So kind of builds on that same idea, some really cool stuff there. Cardboard construction. Okay, so I found these, actually this is one of the things I found out of that Invent to Learn book in the back of it. So they're called make-dos, little set. What you get is you get a little saw, which works so-so with cardboard. It cuts, but it's loud and might take a little while, but you'll get there eventually. This little driver thing and a bunch of these little fasteners. Okay? The idea is you can take 2 pieces of cardboard. And I'm in the air for right now because I don't have time to use the little saw. Take 2 pieces of cardboard. At the end of your saw, there's this little sharp thing. You just punch a hole through your cardboard. Take your driver, put your little screw in the driver, and then you just literally screw 2 pieces of cardboard together through that hole you just punched. And now they're fastened. And they can also move if you want them to move. Very cool things, little things. And they're cheap, like a set's like under $10, I think. And you can buy bags of extra fasteners. You could have a whole bunch of those. So if you notice, this little doll here is, after I found these, I ordered a set for myself. Actually, not for myself, for my daughter. My daughter made that little doll there at home. My daughter has benefited greatly from me working on this project. I've bought all sorts of stuff that she gets to play with now after I found it for this. But she created that whole little doll just out of scrap cardboard we had. The arms moved, and she used little fasteners for eyes, and, you know, just make all sorts of stuff. You know, cardboard's easy to find. You know, put a stack of cardboard out, some of those. Just say build something. If you want a little more guidance, you could say something like build an animal, or build a robot, build a game, chair. Yeah, that might be a little sketchy if they try sitting on it, but, you know, something like that. Super general. The bottom there, you may have watched, anyone ever watched that Kane's Arcade video? It's an awesome video. It's this kid who was, I don't remember how old he was. He was like 8 or 9-ish, I think, something like that. Anyway, he would go where his father worked. I think it was like at a gas station, and would spend all this time there. He ended up making a full arcade out of cardboard, and then they actually opened it up, and people came in and played these cardboard arcade games. It's a really cool video. Watch it sometime. It's awesome. So that's one of the things we showed and gave some activity ideas around. Throwies. Anyone ever have a throwie? It's super simple. Here, I'll make one for you as I talk. Basically, you take an LED, a little coin battery, just one of those little flat batteries, and a little piece of tape. And what you do is put the LED right around the coin battery, tape it down. There you go, done. What you can do with these, you can also tape magnets on these and then throw them against anything metallic. Okay? And the other crazy thing about these is LEDs don't use a lot of power. This little battery will have this on continuously for up to a week and a half, depending on the LED. So, yeah. I've seen all sorts of people decorate with these all around their rooms or their makerspaces, stick them in cardboard stuff they made so they have lights in conjunction with their cardboard structure. I've also seen people use these in a dark room, camera with the shutter open for light painting, so you move it around and you leave the shutter open and it's like the streaking sort of effect, and you can write stuff and do all that sort of stuff with it. Very cool, very simple. A million different things you can do with these. And a bag of like 100 LEDs on Amazon's like $3, and you can get a bunch of the coin batteries for $5, and you're off and rolling. So, pretty cool. Here you can see this is a bunch of them with magnets stuck on the bottom side of an underpass. On the metal structures. Someone decorated their car with a bunch of them there. They're fun things. All right, so we brought stuff for you to play with and get some hands-on stuff with. So let's kind of run through what we have. We don't have a lot of table space, so you might have to grab stuff and move around or get cozy, whatever you want to do. But we have a couple things. Up here, we have the make-dos. So we got a bunch of kits of tools and fasteners, some cardboard. Over here, we have, this is a Lego WeDo set, if you want to play around with one of those. The iPad here is set up on the app, so if you want to build something and try and program it, you can. This is actually one of the Vex robot kits that we gave the high school. Again, this is probably wouldn't be standard in most makerspace kits, would be my guess. but because they already had some stuff, we were able to get unique stuff. So you can drive it around. I don't have it set up to be programmed right now, but it is on remote, so you can just cruise around and play around. We have LittleBits set. Anyone use LittleBits? LittleBits are awesome. I'll show you a real quick thing here. They're a bunch of little electronic components like sensors, switches, LEDs, light power source, but there's no wiring involved. They're magnetic, and there's only one way they'll fit together. If you try and go the other way, they won't stick. So you can easily snap stuff together, make some circuits. Very cool. So we have a set of those you can play with. We have, this is a Hummingbird set. Anyone heard? Hummingbird robot kit or something. I forget what they're called, but basically it's a kit to make your own robots. So what they supply is they supply the board, the servo, LEDs, all that stuff. You provide everything else. So you make any robot you want. So you could like combine this with the make do's and make a robot, but then you add this and give it flashing eyes and a hand that moves and stuff like that. So you can take a look at that. I do have a computer that has this software on it if you want to take a look at that and see what it looks like for the programming side. Over here, we have a whole bunch of LEDs, a bunch of batteries, so you can make some of these if you want. There's some wire here if you want to make it longer extensions or whatever. Wire cutter and stripper over here if you want with a box of wire. So you can build some stuff there if you want. Oh, we also have some of this conductive tape. You ever see this stuff? Anyone make the little flashy tag that was in your box? This is the same tape they use for that. Awesome stuff. I saw a really cool activity. You know those little origami balloons, which are like little square paper things? There's I found this activity where you put some of this out on the paper before you fold it, and then you can slip a little coin battery and an LED in, and it makes it light up. It's really cool. We have duct tape. So our middle school and high school, we gave duct tape projects. Wallets, hoodies, bows, all sorts of crazy stuff. So we have that here if you want to try and make something out of duct tape, and a whole bunch of duct tape, different colors. Sphero, anyone use a Sphero before? Yep. These are awesome. Got one of those you can play around with. How about one of these, Bebot? Anyone ever heard of a Bebot? So this is for specifically elementary, for like kind of intro programming sort of stuff. You turn it on. Way I've seen this is you usually take something like some tape, lay down a little course, kind of like what you can do with a Sphero, but this is geared for smaller kids, and you just go, all right, it needs to go forward twice and then turn left, you know, and then go forward 2 more times, turn, you know, the other direction, go back 1 or whatever, and then you hit the little green button, go, and that's what it does. And so you can kind of start thinking about programming and the steps and the sequencing and all that sort of stuff, but geared for very small children, which is awesome. I think this would be a great thing for something after like hour of code, like where you're doing hour of code. Sure, you can make stuff on the computer screen move, but now you're making something actually in front of you move by programming. It's kind of a nice transition. So, yeah.
So we have about a half an hour left, and we would really like to encourage you to come play and explore some of these things, and we want to get you back together with about 5 minutes left. Yeah?
Well,
do you have a thought? Maybe not.
Oh, well, I'm just, tell me if this sounds like a horrible idea, let me all know. I'm wondering if we just finish up the last few minutes and then give time to play and then play and go when you're done? Or would you rather come back after some time?
Let's just play. I do have one question.
Yeah.
Though about, I mean, when we talk about communal libraries, okay, for the kids, is it just like at recess?
Oh, great question, great question. So, and honestly, it's varying depending upon the library. So I know some libraries will have it open during recess or it's like some time after school or before school, kids can come in and do it. I know some schools are working on building like calling them maker clubs or something along that, where it's like an after school club. Kids come in and can work on stuff. I also have this one library, which this is a really cool thing I thought they did. They created a single page sheet of paper which listed all the stuff they got in their kit, right? A little picture of it, a description, what age level they thought it would be appropriate for, and how many kids could do it at a time. And so they had a list of everything that was in their makerspace kit. Then they gave that to teachers in their school. And the librarian at this school signified they had 3 or 4 open time slots during the week when they didn't have anything going on in the library, like every week. And so what they then did was they sent out this one-page sheet to all the teachers, and they let teachers sign up for those spots for makerspace. Okay? So a teacher would sign up, oh, I'm coming in Thursday morning or whatever at this time. Then what the teacher would do is pass around that sheet, and kids would sign up for what they wanted to do during makerspace. So they would say, oh, I want to work with Legos, or I want to work with this. And then they would tell the librarian would have it all out on the cart, so the kids would come in, grab their stuff, got to have their makerspace, put it all away, move on. So it's kind of all over the board on how they're doing it. It just depends on, availability of time and space and all sorts of different stuff. But it's all over the board. Yeah.
Do any of them, since it's on a cart for the most part, do any of them have you to check them out and do them in the classroom?
Not that I've heard of yet, but that could very well work. But no, I don't know of any of ours that are actually pushing it out to classrooms. I think they're having classes come to the library. Yeah.
Libraries for this particular thing.
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, we already had some librarians that were digging in. Who asked that question? Yeah, we already had some librarians that were digging into makerspaces, so it kind of felt like a natural transition to open that up to other librarians. Whereas I think, I know at our district, librarians too, but our teaching staff is under a lot of stress, and we have 85 major changes happening, over the summer, that kind of thing. Librarians felt like a little bit of an easier thing for us.
And I think the main reason, I think, was as Sarah kind of pointed on already, was there was already some interest and growing interest within that group, because they have kind of some, every so often they get together for big meetings. And some of them were already talking about makerspaces and doing this in their libraries, and other people were starting to get interested. So it seemed like a good group that we could get hooked into it pretty easily. And you give them some basic starting off stuff and get them going, and just let it kind of flourish from there and see what happens. So I think that's probably more why we kind of went with libraries.
I'd like to suggest, Josh and I will be around for questions, and I'd like to suggest maybe we just
Wrap up and let you play.
Our only last thing was like, what are our next steps as a district, and then we let people play, and please come ask us questions. Does that sound good?
Oh, you're already on the slide.
Yeah.
So where we're going next is just kind of collect, see how things are going. Again, still have them work with each other, talk about cool things they're doing, want them to share. Hopefully help find some ways to expand what they currently have, and also hopefully if we can, someday find budget and time to maybe get some more libraries involved as well. Idea I had just recently. No one even knows I have this idea really yet, so surprise Sarah and Shelby. I have started thinking about this idea of, you go out in communities, they have makerspaces, right? You can, like, community makerspaces you can go to. You can look them up on the website. Have all these tools and stuff, and people can just come in and build stuff for whatever they want, personal projects. I think it would be really awesome to have a Northshore School District makerspace for any students in North Shore. So if we could find a place and money to equip it and staff it, and just have a place for kids who wanted to come build stuff or work on projects or whatever, I think that'd be cool. But that's like, if it's even a possibility, it's way out there. So, yeah.
To speak to that, a lot of our skills we have, like for example, we have like miscellaneous long-term tables in common areas of the high school, and one of our high schools, the buildings are pretty fragmented, so you can almost use a space like that for your ideas, since your kids are already mobile, and do it similar to like like a white care program where they come in after school and do something simple anyways.
Yeah.
And then that way, if it needs to move or you get bounced out of space, you can just really keep it like in a series of schools that are fairly close together.
That's a good idea.
So that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. All right, so with that, if we'll let you come play around, get hands-on with stuff. If you have questions about any of the stuff that's out, or what we did, or any of these other type of questions, please let us know.
Your URL back up for your
Yep.
slide?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Just gonna do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Feel free to use as much as you would like.
Can you see that? Can you make it bigger?